everyone, I'm Kimberly from Dirt Floor Fibers and welcome back. Today is February 2nd, it's a Sunday. I'm so sorry, I meant to check in with you guys yesterday on the 1st because it is time to plan for February projects, knitting, crocheting, dyeing. We need to get a move on. But I was working on something and I was so close that I had to finish it yesterday, and so I didn't want to come on until I had gotten that accomplished. Now you might also be wondering, it's February. It's freezing in your house. Why are you not in your usual hat and sweater and all bundled up? And that's because I have not one, but two finished objects that I want to show you today, and a regular t-shirt I felt would showcase the projects a little bit more. Yeah, I finally finished them, guys. All right, so one of my big personal goals was to get my Christmas sampler finished in January, and that was using my Knotty Pine Fiberco. Is Fiberco at the end? I don't know. Knotty Pine anyway. Advent calendar, which was the DK weight merino. And it's done. And not only is it done, it is blocked, it is dry, and all the ends are woven in. Now, I do have to go back and trim off the excess stuff because I like to weave in my ends, block it, and then trim off the excess. So I still have to do that. But other than that, she done. Now, you guys know through the whole knitting process that I had mixed feelings about this project. And I still have mixed feelings about this project, to be 100% fair. Yeah. So let's start with yarn. All right, so this is the Bighorn DK that is from Knotty Pine. Again, I got it in the Advent calendar, so it was 20-gram minis. I did not particularly enjoy the knitting process with the yarn. It wasn't bad, but it untwisted and split really easily. And so especially if I was knitting in low lighting, it was sometimes hard to tell if something was one stitch or two stitches. And I have a few places where I split the yarn when I was making a stitch, and so I had one or two of the plies that are sticking out a little bit further. I think blocking it hit it really well, so I'm not really worried about that. But the fabric, when it's all done, I really like. So it's smooth. I had somebody one time, I almost had a stroke, but I held it back in. They were petting some of my hand spun yarn, and they're like, it's not very soft. It was merino and silk. It's as soft as yarn is going to get, my friends. But I think what they meant was that it wasn't squishy and fluffy and soft in that regard. Instead, it was smooth and dense, and that's the kind of yarn I prefer. And that's the kind of yarn that this is. So it's soft, but it's a really sturdy, kind of dense fabric when you finish knitting it, even in places where it's open work. It's not soft and fluffy. It's smooth, which I really, really like. That's kind of my ideal yarn. So even though it was a pain to work with, wasn't a huge fan, the final fabric I really, really like. So I do like that. Colors, I'm still a little out to, whatever on, not 100% sure, but it's not bad. I like the final kind of overall look. I don't know how I like the switch between the warm and the cool colors, and then when you're wearing a shawl, then the warm and the cool are gonna be right next to each other because of the way you wrap it. So I'm still not 100% sure, but overall, it's pretty and well done. So shawl itself, hated the pattern with Fiery Passion. If you ever want to make it yourself, I am never making another one of these again. I'm not saying that you shouldn't go and make one, because you totally can. I mean, you can see it's pretty, right? But I do have a project page on Ravelry under Dirt Floor Fibers that I put all of my notes in. I didn't always put in where I changed colors. If you've got a question on that, you can, send me an email or something, and I'm happy to help you out or whatever. But yeah, so I didn't always put that in, but I did put in wherever I found mistakes or things that I changed personally. All those notes are up on my page. So if you go to do this shawl, I highly recommend not only checking out my page, by other people who have also put in notes, just so you can go in with your eyes open and not have any surprises. So the main thing that I changed about this pattern, I did hate the bobble stitches, but by the last bobble stitch section, I think I figured out how to actually do them. So they look a little bit better on the second side of the shawl. So I did end up doing those. I wasn't going to at first, but I did. Learned a new skill. But the big change that I made was I added an I-cord border. Obviously, that's going to make you use a little bit more yarn, just a smidgen. But it was really easy with all the color changes to hide my tails by trapping them and going up the side. So it remains to be seen how well those ends are going to stay inside that casing. But after the blocking, I feel like it's looking pretty good, and I don't think I'm going to have an issue. Because again, when you blocked it and you stretched it, all those ends just kind of like went into that tubing on the edge, except for a few that I just have to trim off now that it's dry. But so I did like that. I still have to work on it. I feel like, especially with patterns like, like lacework and things where it's going to block open a lot, that my I-cord border doesn't let it stretch as much as it wants to, which I think that's both a good and a bad thing. It's going to add a little bit more structure to the garment, so it's not going to like overly stretch. So I do like that. But it does kind of make it harder to block something into shape, because this shawl is technically like an asymmetrical triangle. So you can see like the upper edge up here. There's not even enough room to show you the entire thing. And then in theory, down here at the bottom, I should be able to block that into a point, but I couldn't. With the way that my I-cord edging was, it kept pulling it back into like a curved edge, and so it doesn't like, even on the back, you can see how it curves. It doesn't sit completely flat, which in the actual wearing of it, especially the way that I style shawls on myself, that's not going to make any sort of difference. And so having the I-cord edging while losing some of the elasticity, to me, was a trade-off that I was willing to make. So I really, really like adding the I-cord edge. Like I said, all the details are in the notes on my Ravelry page. So I like sampler shawls. I like the fact that, you just kind of get into a stitch, and then by the time you just start getting bored of it, you switch over to a new one, which is fun. Some of the things that I didn't like how some of it repeated. There are a lot of sections of just kind of the plain like mesh stitch, but it kind of felt like it wasn't placed in locations where it was like a palette cleanser. There wasn't like, at least not that I noticed, there wasn't like you're doing 3 motifs and then a mesh and then 3 motifs and then a mesh. Like it was all over the place. And the width of bands of each of the different stitch styles wasn't the same. And so in some places, like you can see here, I had the same pattern done over 3 different colors. And then I've got a pattern, I don't know if it's the same pattern or not, but done over 2 colors. And then now we've got like no, it's not regular, it's close to stockinette, but there's like 3 sections, 2.5 sections of like a plain stitch with like a garter ridge separating it. So it's not even. And I don't know how I feel about that. Like, I almost kind of wish that when it was designed, the designer had done one section for a color, you switch to the next section, which is a different color, you switch to the next section, which is a different color, rather than leaving you to kind of guess where you should change your colors. And in some places, I guessed wrong. I should have done it a little bit differently, but whatever, I think it turned out okay in the end. Especially since because it's like a mystery knit for an advent, there's no finished pictures of it just spread out so you can see what the whole thing looks like. There's just, well, I guess there kind of is. It's like from a distance, you could, like in the pictures on Ravelry, like the finished like examples, there's a few of them like holding it out behind so you can see from a distance what it looks like overall, but there's nothing up close to really show you. And in the pattern itself, you don't get pictures of any of the stitches or anything. So that was really tough, trying to figure out where exactly you should switch colors inside of sections. And again, like I said, you had to guess, and in some of the places I guessed wrong. If I were to do it again, I would have changed it up. But at that point, I was so far past it before I realized I could have done it a different way that it wasn't worth me going back and redoing it again, if that makes sense. So I wish that it was clearer in the pattern, one section per color, motifs planned out a little bit more coherently, you know, things like that. The other thing that really threw me off toward the end, and you'll see my notes on Ravelry just get more and more frustrated as I go along, because there was one random row, maybe 2 rows, in like the middle of the shawl where the pattern for the center spine changed. Well, you guys know, oh, that was the other change I made. I switched the stitch for the center spine and did a centered double decrease rather than the double decrease recommended in the pattern, because I like having that in something with like a point in the middle, right? I like having a really defined spine. I just think that looks really good. And so I changed it up to that center double decrease, centered double decrease, put it that way. And so when the pattern changed it up in a couple of rows, it would have totally disrupted it. So I did the math to make it work out so that I could keep in pattern rather than changing the pattern for like 2 rows. But the problem in the pattern is that it'll tell you how many stitches should be at the end of the row, but it doesn't tell you how many stitches on each side of the marker, in which that changes as you go throughout the pattern. And so there were places where the pattern started to not line up, and I had to do the math to like get the pattern on the right side of my ridge, and without having in the pattern how many stitches were supposed to be on both sides, I had to guess if I was changing the math based on my ridge or if I had made a mistake somewhere in the row and my count was off inside of the row itself, and there was just no way to know, so I had to kind of fudge it. And then I got to a point toward the end over here. I don't remember exactly what row it was. You'll probably see it on my Ravelry page, where it suddenly went from like having, I don't know, like a certain number of stitches as I was getting the spine close to the edge to finish it. It all of a sudden like jumped over by like 6 stitches. But I wasn't off like on my row count or like on my number of stitches. And so I didn't want my center spine to suddenly go, like I wanted it to keep going at a diagonal. And so I ended up adding in like this section right here. That's not in the pattern. I had to do that. I think it's even starting down here in the gray section. I had to do all of that in order to continue the pattern to get the spine over to the edge of the shawl to match back up with the pattern. So I literally had to add like an extra section to make the math work, which it was fine. And it worked out, but I would have run low. Like I was running low. I didn't have enough of my last color to bind off, which is why my bind off is a different color. So when I went to do the bind off, I decided, because I knew I was running low, I went back and I found like I had a few colors that used less. And so I sat and sifted through the ones that I had more of, and I decided to do like a nice bright pop of color as the bind off, which I think looks cool. I really like how I did that. And I'm kind of glad I ran out of this color so I could have that extra finishing detail, because I think it was totally worth it. But the last row before you start the bind off, on the wrong side, it has you knit so that there's a purl bump on the right side. But then when you go to do the, when I went to do the I-cord bind off, that meant that I had like this extra ridge right here. Whereas on the other side, it's smooth and it looks good. So if I hadn't already gone and started binding off before I realized it, and then I couldn't figure out how to undo the I-cord without messing up all of my work, I would have gone back and torn out that whole last row. and made sure that there was a flat knit stitch on that side instead of having the purl bump. So, but again, I'm the only one who's going to notice it. Once it's on, if you're looking that close, you should probably back up a few feet. But yeah, so that's what that came out like. So overall, the project is fine. I enjoy the project. Let's put her on so you can see what she looks like. So that's the overall look. So super cute, super cozy. You're not going to be able to see all the mistakes and how much I hate this with a fiery passion when I'm wearing it. So it's super nice, super comfortable. I'm never making one of these again. But again, if you decide you want to make one because you like this idea of having like a sampler shawl, go on and take a look at everybody's pattern notes just so you kind of know what you're getting into. And especially if you're on a row and you're like, this row doesn't make any sense. Go look and see if somebody made a comment on it because there's a chance that it's the pattern, not you. So that's what that looks like. But I had a second whip. So I have and by the way, that's like how much yarn I had left from my advent calendar. There might be a couple of balls still rolling around somewhere, but that's essentially what it looks like. I have my first market of the year is on February 20th, down in Hampton, Hampton, Virginia Beach, somewhere in that area, where there's going to be a knitting workshop retreat sort of thing. And there's a vendor booth area, and there's between 5 and 7, I think, of us who are going. And it didn't cost me anything to get a booth. The lady was super nice. And so I figured I would just go and see how it was. But I wanted to get some samples done before I went there. I also have a bunch of dyeing to do, but we'll talk about that another time. And the big sample project that I wanted to get done, as you guys know from my January planning, was I've just forgot what it was called. Ripples? Something with ripples in it. Oh my gosh. I'll put a picture and the name of the shawl, and it's all going to be linked down below as well. I just looked, and I already can't remember again what it's called. I don't know. It's gone. But it's basically you're alternating a slub with not a slub. And so I chose to do my sheepishly slub yarn, and I paired it with my Hint of Silk, which is a merino silk blend. I also think this would look really good with a brush surrey alpaca. Could also do mohair, but I'm not really a mohair person, sort of thing. But you totally could do mohair if that's your jam. And it called for 1 ball of each. And so you just basically need a slub yarn and then something that's not slub yarn. Fingering weight in this particular pattern. This is how much I had left over. I was a little surprised when I was starting the pattern. I thought it was going to use the entire skein. Now my Hint of Silk does have, by the way, this is Crumble and this is Beneath the Ice. Crumble, Beneath the Ice. It does have 491 yards in the Hint of Silk. So it does have a good amount of yardage to it. I can't remember off the top of my head how much this one has. But when I was finished, I ended up with 27 grams of this left over and 53 grams left of this. So there's plenty of yarn left to do something else with it. I don't know what, but I can definitely get another project out of this. I have no idea. I've got to figure out how I'm going to store my scrap yarns. I kind of organized everything else, but it didn't cross my mind to figure out what I'm going to do with the leftovers. So I don't know. That's a problem for me at a later point. So the shawl basically alternates those two together. Very simple garter, very simple increase, and you're basically just alternating the colors in different increments. And I don't even know which is the right side and which is the wrong side on here. Let me find where I wove my ends in, and that'll tell me. Oh my gosh. No, that doesn't even tell me. Where's the other end? That's the back side. Okay. So here's the front side. And so you can see it's actually kind of, the two colors are so close together that I love this kind of really rippled effect to it. It's very beachy to me. So it starts out with thin pinstripes, and then they start getting wider and wider. And then we end up with this down here. And there's a lovely just kind of eyelet pattern in between each of the sections just to break it up. And I just absolutely love the way that it looks. So I was getting kind of worried as I was getting close to the end because the shawl looked really small. as compared to the pictures, and also had a lot of yarn left. And so I was getting worried. But when I went back and looked at it, I realized in the pictures, it is actually a pretty small shawl. And in the directions, it specifically tells you to steam block it because otherwise it grows like crazy. Well, I prefer a lighter, drapier, larger shawl as compared to like a smaller, denser one, at least for things that are like this. And so I blocked the tarnation out of it and it grew like crazy. And it is now a really nice sized project. Like it's not like massively large, but it fits around my football shoulders very comfortably without having it feel like it's too small. So I really, really like that. This I also did not, I have notes up on Ravelry. I have to put in the final pictures and when I finished it and things like that. I didn't change anything about the pattern. I was really happy. I've told you guys in the past that I swear I am never doing a shawl pattern again unless it has a slip stitch border or an I-cord border. This one had a slip stitch border built into it, so all I had to do was follow the directions. I carried whatever the secondary color, the secondary unworked color, up the side the entire time. I tried to make sure that I left it as loose as possible so that top edge is still a little bit tight where I carried the yarn, but you can see that it sits flat nicely, so it stretches enough that the shawl looks good, but it also has enough structure to keep it from stretching too much, which again, like I just said, I really, really enjoy. And then as I got to the end, I'm like, you know what would look really good? I am going to do that last bind off in an I-cord. And so I get to the end and it was already telling me that I need to switch from the one color and then bind off in the other color. And I looked to see what kind of bind off it wanted me to do. And then it was an I-cord. I didn't have to think about it. It was written right into the, how did they know? How did they know that's what I love? Anyway, and so it ends off with just an I-cord border. I don't know if I can get to focus. But so I, again, love how you have that final section and then that little just pop of color at the end. How pretty is that? Look how like light and thin it is. Like it's just absolutely gorgeous. And so that's why I always tell people the slub yarn is fantastic for like a summer weight, like t-shirt or tank top. Like you don't want to wear like a lot of wool in the summer, right? Even though it breathes really well and it doesn't get as stinky as like your synthetic fibers and things like that. You don't want, it can be a little overwhelming for modern people, right? To wear wool in the summer. But when you have something that is that light and airy and open and smooth and not like fuzzy where it's going to stick to you, that would be a gorgeous weight for a summer t-shirt or even a tank top. So anyway, so that's the end. And that wraps around like that. Look how it's just, oh, it's perfect. As that part fell off. I didn't wrap it perfectly, but it's perfect in and of itself. Oh my gosh, it is so, like, I just love this. I absolutely adore this shawl. It'd even be cute, like, let's say you're going for like a little dinner on the beach and you've got like your cute little dress on, right? You could flip it around your shoulders and just becomes like a nice little wrap. You could even, like tie it up on the side. I don't know. I'm kind of making this up as I go along, right? And you've got like this just a little something around your neck. You could put a shawl cuff or a little pin on it. Just keep it kind of, it's so cute. This I would make more of. Now, I don't know if I'll actually make more of it because I've got so many projects on my list, but if I needed a shawl to show off like 2 different colors, I would not hesitate to make this again. You guys know that when I showed you last time, I think my marker was like somewhere down here. And so I finished it the rest of the way, plus that other shawl, plus I haven't even shown you my crochet pile yet in January. So really, really happy with this project. I also love the yarn, but I'm not going to talk about that very much because I feel like I'm biased because it's my yarn. But I'm just really, really happy with it. And so now I'll have this as a sample for that January 20th show, which is what my goal was. And I just finished it super early. So that means I get to make up new goals for February and I have to completely rethink it because what my goal was is already done. I am ahead of, when am I ever ahead of the game, guys? Right now, and that's probably it, so don't get used to it. But so, what do I want to do next? Well, I am running through whips like nobody's business. So my goal for my goal for February is 2 more whips. And the whips that I've picked out, I want to finish this Musselburgh hat. I'm so close to the end. I have to go back and measure it. I think the reason why I didn't start decreasing was either because I couldn't find my double pointed needles, or I wasn't 100% sure if I was measuring it correctly, so I needed to get my tape measure out in a place where I could lay it out. But I am almost to the decreases on the other side. This is going to take me no time at all to finish, and then I'll have a hat. This, again, is my Hint of Silk. So close. So I definitely want to finish that. And then my other whip that I want to get off the needles, well, it's off the needles now, technically. The other whip I want to finish is my Worsted Boxy by Joji Locatelli. And I've showed you guys this one before as well. I have the whole body finished. All I need is that little bit of a collar up here at the top, and then the sleeves, which the sleeves, I don't know how it sits. Let me put it on for you. I love this sweater. And it's getting warmer outside, so like watch us be past the worst of the winter weather, and I'm going to finish my sweater with no time to actually wear it. All right, so here's basically what it looks like. So it definitely needs that little collar up at the top, but then the sleeves are kind of dropped down. And so to finish it off, excuse me, it's like something in the realm of like that much of ribbing where it kind of cinches it up and goes down. So I am almost done. This is real. If I sat down and worked on it and didn't mess anything up, I think I could finish this in 3 nights max. And then I just need to block it and it would be ready to go. I love this too. Color, I believe, is dried lavender. And this is my By the Hearth Worsted, which is a baby alpaca and merino mix. And again, I told you guys before that I love, my favorite yarns aren't necessarily the ones that are like soft and fluffy. Like I sometimes worry that when I have merino that's like really soft, that it's gonna pill really fast or not going to like last, or if I get sweaty, it like sticks to me like the little fuzzies. But this is like smooth and dense, and like the twist on it is like a dream. Again, I feel really biased because it's my yarn, so like don't take my word for it. But honestly, I always tell people this all the time. All the yarn bases that I use, and quite frankly, most of the colors as well, if we're being honest, I ended up with them because I wanted it for a project and then just experimented with bases until I found the one that I wanted for my project, and then I stocked it for everybody else. So I love all of my bases because I selfishly didn't pick them out for you guys. I picked them out for me. So can anybody else say that? That's why I don't do any of the like 80-20s or 85-15s, 75-25s. I don't know, whatever the combinations that everybody uses for the like merino nylon mixes for like sock yarn. Not a huge fan of those personally, and so I don't dye them because I dye what I want to dye because, quite frankly, I'm doing it for me and my projects. And you guys just get to benefit off of it. So my giant purple grape sweater, almost done. So those are my 2 whip projects that I want to finish up in February. And even though I'm also market prepping for crochet and I'm going to have to start dyeing for that market on the 20th, I am like energized after my success in January. And so I'm also going to cast on a new project. So it was super simple because I still have my bin. I'm not even gonna show it to you. So I'd have to move you or I'd have to move the bin. But I have that big Rubbermaid container where I put all of my like coming up this year project yarns. And so all I have to do is pull out the little tote bag. If you remember from when I did that video, this is the Cape May Fiber Co. that I got at the Frederick, Maryland Fiber Fest last fall. And the whole story was that I saw somebody, I'd seen these the previous year, like the shiny bags, but I never like went around and looked and figured out which booth was actually selling the shiny bags. And then I had somebody who was in my booth this year and we were chatting about other things and she had the shiny bag and I'm like, I am so sorry, but but I have to ask you, what booth did you get that bag from? And she told me, and then I hate her, pulled out a skein of yarn. I can't remember, I think this is the one she had, or one like this. And she's like, look at what I bought. And it was this DK weight silk alpaca, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, silk alpaca. It's like the same stuff that I have, but in a lace weight, but it's in a DK weight. And I was like, so as soon as it slowed down, I ran over and found the lady in the lady's booth. And I'm like, I don't know what I need this for, but I need this. And she in her booth had samples. She had a sweater that was knit with just this. So a lot of sweaters, even if like, DK weight or whatever, it's a fingering strand of regular yarn and then a lace weight of the Suri alpaca. But because this is DK weight on its own, you could knit the whole sweater without having to double strand it, which was so cool. It was like a little bit like, it was very light and very fluffy because it didn't have the structure of another yarn with it, but it looked really cool. And then she also had a hat. Again, a lot of people do hats where you double strand the regular fingering weight with lace weight alpaca silk. It's just done out of this. And I'm like, God, it's so pretty. But like, it wasn't really what I wanted. Like, I liked the yarn, the projects were cool, but I would never actually wear those projects. And as I was thinking about it, and I was wandering around her booth, and I was trying to like talk myself in or out of getting the yarn, a sample that she had around a mannequin. Oh, no, she actually brought me over. I was looking around, and she's like, well, if you're not sure, come over and look at this. She dragged me over to this mannequin that had this shawl on it, okay? It is the Merfolk Fade Shawl. Again, I'll put this in the links down below. And this is, it doesn't, I'll pull out and look later. I don't know what kind of yarn they used in this. It's not a fuzzy in the original pattern, but it is a DK weight. And you need 3 colors, and it kind of blends and fades together. So she had done this shawl in 3 of the DK fuzzies. It was freaking gorgeous, guys. Like, I cannot even. I have been dying to work on this project ever since I bought the yarn. And so the yarn that I got looks like this. And so again, the colors, this is Pink Sand. This one is Ocean, something that I can't read. And then this one is Needle in the Haystack. And so how I picked these colors, this is the one, the Pink Sands, was the one that caught my eye. There's an extra fuzzy in here. Was the one that really, really caught my eye. And then this was the one that I had seen that the woman had in my booth. And I'm like, yes, very pretty. I love those together. And then I was debating. They had a couple of other colors that kind of like were more matchy-matchy with these guys and would have been a really subtle fade. But I was feeling adventurous at the end of last year. And I was like, I need a pop of something, right? I need a little oomph in my life. And so I ended up going with like this orangey color, which again is not a color I would at all normally pick for myself. But like, check that out. Or I think I actually like it like that. I think I'm gonna do it like that. How gorgeous is that going to look like as a fade? And it's so fuzzy. It's so fuzzy, guys. And again, so this is the Cape May Fiber Co. Suri Silk Chonk is the name of the base. And it's 90% Suri alpaca and 10% mulberry silk with 246 yards to 100 grams. And it's hand dyed in New Jersey. This is going to be my new cast on. And it's DK weight, so this is going to be a really, really fast make. And it's got like that little like chevron pattern that I like that like makes my heart sing. Look how pretty that is. Look how pretty that is. And I did buy the paper copy. I should have just gone on Ravelry and downloaded it there, and I probably will too. But since I was there and I didn't want to forget it, I just went ahead and supported the person and bought the stinking pattern. I'm so excited. So anyway, so this is going to be, oh gosh, my next cast on. So depending on what time it is, I have to turn this off and see what time it is. I might go ahead and wind these up and then maybe even cast on today. That may or may not happen before I post this video, so I'll show you as soon as I do get a cast on though. So if I don't see you again, you guys have a great day. I'll check in with you guys soon, and if I do see you, it'll pop up in 2 seconds. Bye. All right, guys, I want to pop on for just a minute because I did cast on my new project. I'm so excited. But first, enjoy this little photo shoot with the sheep. I gotta say, Amelia and Unica are getting really good at their modeling skills. Bianca, who's the darkest color one, still a little camera shy, so if you want to leave her any encouragement in the comments, she would love to hear from you. So enjoy. So I went to go get their food out of the car, and I realized I left the bucket at their pen last night, and so now we have to go back to the car to get food, and they're coming with me. Hi, little girl. Oh my gosh. They know where the snacks are. All right. Hi. Hi. All right. Ouch. Excuse you, miss. Out of the car. Excuse you. She's like, hi. Excuse me. She's like climbing up on me. Her mom used to do that too. She would actually climb right in the car. Excuse you. All right. I actually gave them like half a scoop too much, but that's okay. Excuse you, miss. Come on. Hi. I know. Come on. So the two smaller ones, especially Amelia, when she really gets running, sometimes she starts hopping, and it is the cutest thing ever. Okay, soft knees. Guys, come on. Sheep, come on. Come on, sheep. Come on. I'm coming. Come on. Gotta go in if you want your snacks. All right. I need 2 hands for this, so give me a second. All right, and we're back. So I wanted to show you my progress so far, and I'm having definite mixed feelings, but I think we're on the right track. I did use my Heritage Wool, I can see that, bag I got with my Advent kit from Indie Untangled, so loving it. I did get all of my colors wound up into cakes. That's my other color, and one more. Oh gosh, I'm stuck. Panic. There we go. Okay. So there are my 3 colors. I think I'm going to put this purple one in the middle. I think I'm going to do it like that. No, I'm not. Yeah, I think that's going to be the order. So according to the pattern, you need 180 yards of your first one and then 200 yards of your second 2 colors. So I hope I did that right, because I wanted to use the 180 yards. I hope I didn't mess that up, but that was my least favorite color, so I decided to do this for the 180, and then these would be the 200 yards. Like I said, I hope I read that correctly, and it was supposed to be the first one and not the last one, because now I'm doubting myself, but whatever, we'll go with it, because I've already started, and I'm not starting over again. So, yes, I said start over again. This is actually the 3rd iteration. I can't remember what happened to the first one, but something was wonky, and I didn't like it. And I do know the first row, all of the increases are a make one, but on the first row, it's hard to like figure out what crossbar to use to make one. So I ended up in my 2nd iteration and in my 3rd doing a knit front back instead of the first make one. And then when I came back in the other direction, it was easier to find the bar and lift it up. And so that worked. And then when I was working on iteration number 2, I feel like there's a spot where I thought I dropped a stitch, but like the numbers worked out, but it still looked like there was a space and I couldn't tell because the yarn is so fuzzy. And then I also realized, remember how I vowed I would never do a project unless it had either a slip stitch edging or a I-cord edging? Well, I forgot to put a slip stitch edge on this one, and I looked at it and I'm like, maybe it's fine with the fuzzy yarn. And I was like, no, I hate this. So I tore it out. I did end up, it pulled out pretty easily to a certain point, and then it got like stuck and I got mad and I just pulled it and it broke. So I have like a little triangle that I just like threw to the side. I have plenty of yarn here, so I don't think that's going to make a difference. But if you're going to frog something using this yarn, be gentle unless you don't care if it breaks. So this is what I have so far. It was a little rough going at first, and I'm like, I hate everything. But now that we're going, it feels so nice. It is so fuzzy, and I absolutely adore how the yarn is working up. Pattern was a little tricky because, like I said, at the second time through, I was having trouble figuring out like what row I was on, so I didn't know like how many stitches were supposed to be on both sides, so I thought I lost one, and I don't know. So when I redid it, I put a just a little light bulb stitch marker in the first, oh gosh, come on, focus, in the first kind of center spine, so I could tell what was my row number 1. And then when I need to count the rows, because sometimes it's hard to tell the garter stitch down toward the bottom, but now it's really easy to count the spine stitches right there. I hope you can see that. Am I showing you the right side? I am showing you the right side. It's just hard to see, but it's like that right there. And you can count it pretty easily. Like I said, I also added the slip stitch edge, which I think makes it look much nicer. The other nice thing about this pattern, because it grows unequally, so it grows more on this side, obviously, than on this side. And then when you hit a certain point, this part stays the same and this part keeps getting longer. And so there's actually a chart at the end of the pattern that takes you by like the rows and tells you how many stitches you should have on each side of the marker, which was something that I didn't like not having when I did my Christmas sampler shawl. So I really like that about the pattern. It alternates. I thought in my head it was all garter stitch. You couldn't really tell in the pattern. It just looked like garter stitch. but apparently it alternates garter with lace. And so I've just done the first 2 rows of the lace pattern, so you're not really actually going to be able to see much of anything so far. But it's from what I've seen so far, it looks like it's going to be like an eyelet mesh sort of lace, but it's done in a slightly different way from usual. And so I feel like I've done this particular stitch pattern before, and I feel like I liked it, but I can't remember exactly what it ended up looking like. And I don't know how it's going to look in the super fuzzy yarn. So I'm super excited to continue with that and see how it grows. So yeah, that's how much we got done so far. And the pattern thus far is great. The yarn is great once you get used to it. And that's that. So, all right, so I'm going to sign off for here. I am freezing because I thought it was warm today and didn't wear a coat, just wore my sweatshirt and my hat. And now I'm chilly, so I'm going to put on some warm jammies and then go crawl into bed with a space heater and probably keep working on this, because do I have 1,000 other things I'm supposed to do? Yes. Do I still want to sit in bed and work on my fuzzy scarf? Also yes. So we'll see how far we get, and I will check in with you guys next time. Bye.